Mr. Follicles at the old arcade. A short story. After some bad medical news, the narrator encounters the ghost of an old friend. Precious few things can wiggle your creepies as much as the sterile scent of medicine, in my experience. It is 3/4 the aversion. Some, like myself, will avoid even necessary doctoring until the very angel of death is coming up the steps and is just about to knock with a rattle upon your solid door. There is the unnatural stench of hygiene, putrid in its sanitary peak. It cloys and presages the rank reprisal. It is the smell of fresh bandages and cough mixture and penicillin. It is one reason, the chief reason, why, therefore, for several years I present, if required, only to the surgery of Dr. Abdul bin Shamoon. Wafting up from a dim corner in the waiting room, unseen but not unnoted, rises the pleasing pillars of sandal and musk, a cheap but effective masking and relief from the medical certainty of the norm. It is an exotic ambience, along with an Indian lady at reception who is dark and stern and processes my details with rigour and aplomb. It does not smell like a clinic, that is to say. That is the thing. It smells like a knick-knack store in Bombay. There is no cold remembrance of formalin to endure. The magazines, moreover, are cosy. The carpets are rough shag. Dr. Abdul bin Shamoon himself looks like a well-groomed chai vendor from the back streets of Karachi. It is what I prefer among my medicos these days, but only if absolutely required, which unfortunately is the case when at my age your ticker starts to linger. You can ignore hemorrhoids or stinky toe rash, but not the flat malady of a lazy heart. Accordingly, I go to Dr. Abdul bin Shamoon. I enjoy the sandal and the musk. I appreciate the glaring lack of that gross odour of pervasive health. And after a few pokes and dilations, he tells me the obvious. "You have a cheesy aorta," he says. "You'll have to take it easy." Then he scribbles on his pad and charges me a small fortune. He puts the Velcro sleeve about my upper arm, gives the horn a pump, and the pressure dial goes purple in the face. Therein is the problem. You must avoid stress, he tells me. There are tablets, of course, and his other recommendation is an easy stroll in the calm of the evenings and a quiet night at home. No excitement, he says. I am thinking, though, that this cannot be too hard. Elegant Ridge is the mecca of dull evenings. The bars dribble to an early close and the cinema only caters to pimply romance. Gentle strolling, on the other hand, is a ready feature, with broad avenues, streets lined with jacaranda and long empty lanes. There is the river and the bridge, and the municipal parkland, and wide open spaces and tea tree scrub on the verge. I am walking down King William Street, breathing in the hot air and living odours and considering the implications of this cheesy aorta. The tablets give me reflux, and the admonition to avoid stress gives me cause to wonder about such daily evils as my tax return and the squalid state of my neighbours who complain about the wonky fence. It is a typical 9 p.m. The sky is still bleeding with strains of orange and maroon, and the moon is full and lovely in the shimmering wastes of the east. There are a few cars and stray dogs and tourists looking aimless around the Chinese takeaway. I'm sauntering past the old Wool Exchange arcade, once a jewel of the city, but now a dusty hole of dereliction, closed in with sheets of iron and a railing installed over 20 years ago. There was a bustling trade in its long arcades in the era when haberdasheries were in their heyday, when steamers plied the Murrumbidgee fat with wool bales and canola and the splendid produce of the soil. For some reason, it all went south. The building shut shop in 1952. Now it languishes on the corner. No one even notices anymore. That is when I heard the hiss of new attention. Psst, psst, over here. That is when I turn around and gaze frowning into the looming shadows of the olden stairwell. That is when I shake my head and suddenly recoil. That is when my evening takes a dither. The stairs and side decorations are in a luscious Orientalist design. Those were the days of empire. There is a pattern of green and turquoise tiles with 8-pointed stars and tiny golden mirrors, all bespeaking of a wealth long departed. The stairwell is cuddled into the far corner. Ordinarily, the wrought iron gate should be shut quite firm and bridged with brassy locks, but I see it opened, peeled back, and to my utter dilapidated consternation, I spy, refocusing, a figure in the gloom, and it looks for all the world like a makeshift clown in tawdry baubles and a ghoulish attempt at whiteface. I recoil as I say. My lazy heart pounds like a hammer, and a huge ball of horror cramps up my throat. "Over here," says the figure. "Over here." I step back. My thoughts quickly rearrange the entire occasion. Then the figure says, "It's me, Lou. What's the matter?" I go pale. "Lou?" I say. "Lou?" The clown in the stairwell wears the broken face of ages. His big red nose is crooked. The shock of mock hair is in a tangle of pink fits. I'm stupefied by this. "Lou? Lou?" "What's the matter?" asks the clown. "You look like you've seen a ghost," as if it is a jest. Not only is he dishevelled, so I notice, but as well as that forlorn, and I cannot help but note the pockmarks on his skin and the welts of unhappy longing that are his clowning eyes. Refocusing only makes my ticker quicker. The ball of horror makes me gasp, or at very least stumble on my words. Lou," I stumble. Lou, it was only 3 weeks ago that I went to your funeral." I say it. It is hard to say. The clown looks up. Now I can see him with strange certainty. It is Lou Lanigan, also known as Mr. Follicles, clown about town, famous for his funny hair, who for 30 years fell over upside down at children's parties and gave a slap and tickle and flopped about in massive red galoshes and honked his horn and caused lopsided mayhem on his unicycle. He seems unperturbed that he is officially dead. "What are you doing?" he asks me, matter of fact. "Just out for a walk," I say. He seems satisfied with that. "Want to walk through the old arcade?" he asks me. He signals upward with his head. He means go upstairs and into the wool exchange. "It's open," he smiles. My throat ball still does not subside. His smile is the smile of a sad clown under 6 feet of stubborn earth. I swallow. I glance around. "Lou," I says, "you are scaring me. This is no good for my cheesy aorta." "Once," he says, "it must have been very beautiful." He means the arcade, not my aorta. You can imagine it, bustling with trade, dress stores, tea houses and coffee shops. "Yes," I say, "so it is said." "Have you been up there before?" he asks. "No," I say, "I've not." Then the apparition stands up, his poker pants bubbling with big red dots. He seems corporeal enough. He looks just like the final time I saw him, before the final waylay set in and carried him off in a hurry. He looks diminished, but this was from the whopping casks of alcohol he consumes. The sorry state of his cheeks reported so. He has always been a misery, Mr. Follicles. His marriage was a long-running carbuncle. His poor wife, Margaret, is a Mary-loving Catholic, but Lou is an atheist of savage conviction, a professional doubter, a denier of lament, a sceptical positivist in a clown suit. She endured his drunken rages. There were times obsessive when he would start haranguing kiddies with the theories of Bertrand Russell and was inclined to tell them that God is every bit as fluffy as the Easter Bunny or as unestablished as Santa Claus. Parents had to intervene. "Come on," he says. "Come and have a look." I am rigorously reluctant. "Lou?" I ask again, pleading. I wonder if these meds have not gone to my head. Lou just looks at me, his big clownish gaze aloof in the essentials of living. There is no sign a heart beats within his chest. Mine is still gobsmacked and pounding. The man had an atheist funeral. Every transcendent aspiration was expunged in assurances of terminal finitude. I watched as they lowered his unbelieving carcass deep into the pit. He invites me again and turns and starts up the decorated stairwell into the moonlit shadows. "Lou," I call out. "Come and have a look," he calls back. "You should see this window." There are no locks on the drawn gate. There is no force unbecoming. The arcade is open. I have the trembles, but some curious compulsion picks up my feet onto the steps one at a time. The window in question adorns the immediate wall upon emerging from the stairwell. The stained glass is illumined by dull streetlights, perhaps from the town hall, as much as by the moon. It is suitably radiant, vibrant with oxidized dark green and blues and depictions of a wool-struck lamb and shears and the bronzed ruggedry of a tall pioneer, stylized against local flora. It was perhaps 30 foot high, commanding the full floor of the exchange, as it once had been. Who knew it was lost among the dusty tiles? "Glassy illuminations," says Lou exactly. I am, I admit, momentarily at odds with myself. "Extraordinary," I agree. And I looks about the arcade, broken with neglect, but still sturdy in its woodwork. The window allows a musty gloom of colours. "Whose design do you think it is?" Lou asks me, suddenly dropping his clown voice. It is a question of local history. Is it one of Carlyle Tippett's? He wonders. Tippett was active in the relevant age. Or is it Sir Thomas Perryman, I wonder, looking over it again? "You're right," says Lou. "It's a Perryman for sure." And in the silence that swamped over this comment, I realised I am talking Art Nouveau with a dead clown. I eventually have to ask, "What are you doing, Lou?" The clown looked sideways at me and then looks back to the window. The space is much larger than the ground floor would surmise, and our voices have insipid echoes trailing off into the side rooms, formerly tally rooms, where wool carters calculated pennies. He doesn't like to give me any reply. He points down the arcade halls and reports that there, once, among the living, were tasteful emporiums and vendors of exotic ways. "You can imagine it, can't you?" he says, full of fluid trade, and his eyes perhaps could see things from which mine are forbidden. We walk among the ruins, shuffling. The fuzzy aura of his follicles lights up when he walks through the light of a moonbeam seeping in. Sooner or later, I have to say to him again, "Lou, 3 weeks ago I went to your funeral." He hears me this time. "Was it funny?" he asks, hopeful. "An atheist's funeral is always funny," I says, shrugging my shoulders, since this has been my observation. He turns away at this point, though, and says, "Let's not talk about that." It was more to the point that his liver made a pact with the devil. He had always been a sodden clown. Now his skin was white and bleak. Even children sensed his maudlin pathos. There were times when his Mr. Follicles routine terrorised young sensitives, who, rather than laugh, cried and ran to Mummy. "Did anyone honk the horn?" he asks. He means at the funeral. He is holding his horn. He waves it about with some futility. I don't think they did, Lou, no. The bleakest truth was that Mr. Follicles' clown about town was never very funny, and 30 years of falling over upside down at children's parties did test the dignity of a drinking man. The odours of the arcade are all dry with dusty enclosure. It is the smell of yesteryear and waste. It is another smell I would ordinarily avoid as much as the rank sterility of doctors and their kit. But Mr. Follicles' nose is bulbous, and he says to me, "Can you smell that?" He is puffing on the air and warmed in a dead man's way. "Coffee beans," he decries, and he is momentarily transported. Then he stops, looks about, and lavender, he says, lanolin, and methylated spirits. "I'm sorry, Lou," I say. "I cannot smell a thing." And, as I have already related, I am a man averse to cloying odours. The smell of methylated spirits makes me chilly. Lou was puzzled. "Smell the coffee beans," he insists to me again, as we moved past what had once been small stores fragrant with prosperity. "I can't smell it, Lou," I says. "Only the old dust and the empty air." He looks perturbed and tragic. He can't understand why I can't smell the coffee beans. They are robust and nostalgic, and remind him of life. We sauntered, noting architectural niceties, until we came to a corral where the old bar had been. It was the inexorable direction, but just a corner of dust and darkness. I realise it is the bar that brings Lou up here. I'm thinking I'm dreaming, or in that netherworld of which the llamas speak. Lou grows unhappy, and it is as though he too might be wondering. Things seem substantial, but the smells are vagrant, and the clown was finding little tickle his merry. He goes downcast and honest. Finally, he says to me, or to no one, or to some ludicrous presence, "You know," he says, "I'm really thirsty. I've been really thirsty since the funeral. My aorta, I should say, does not like this one bit. I am riding a cortisol high. This is not at all what Dr. Abdul bin Shamoon had recommended, and a cold thinking suddenly convinced me that, quite possibly, I am lured by Lou because my aorta is ragged, in fact, and I am actually a dead man too. "You know, Lou," I says, helpless, trying not to get beguiled, "I think I should keep going with my walk. I've got a cheesy aorta. The doctor says I should get out and about." And I motioned my head back to the descending stairwell. The window was worthy, but I am wishing I wasn't there. For a moment, I know, poor old Lou considers sitting down at the bar and waiting to be served. But instead he goes jolly and says he will see me down, and then jokes with a slap and a tickle and his red nose in sideways array. "You know what they say," he says, "absence makes the fart grow Honda." And he smiles wide and waits for the hilarity. "Boom, boom," I say. He pouts. "It works better with a whoopee cushion," he admits. Then he wonders, did they tell jokes at the funeral? "We laughed ourselves silly," I assured him. The Wool Exchange arcade was indeed a lost treasure. Aside from the Perryman window, which deserved national recognition, there were some late Victorian arrangements still intact, and it seems a dire pity it is forever empty. I walk past it perhaps 100 times. Ample foot traffic walks past it every day, and it is forgotten. It remains a market of forgotten joys, lace and woolwear, bonnets, pretty girls in aprons, busy boys moving stock, the smell of coffee beans. But I remind myself again, it is against doctor's orders. I get to the stairwell and look to Lou, and then down to the gate onto the mellow street. The clown is holding up the brassy lock. I have to lock up again, he informs me. Yes, I says, thinking it is good. But he frowns a clown frown. They won't let me keep the key, he says, bitter. Won't they, Lou? I say. Why not? I don't know, he says. And he thinks about it and says again, I don't know. And it is at this unknowing that I have to leave him, and I do it quickly, with my aorta pumping, flurrying down the stairs. It is exactly the exertion Dr. Abdul bin Shamoon anticipated in his warning. It is exactly why, when he puts the Velcro sleeve about my upper arm, the pressure dial goes purple in the face. My ticker does linger. And it is why the stench of medicine forever wiggles my creepies, and why I am thinking death is a joke that would work much better with a whoopee cushion. Lou's funeral, in fact, was tawdry. Only a few of us straggled. No one told jokes. It was over in a heartbeat. God wasn't there. Nor was there any gathering of tickled kiddies who had missed the somersaults of Mr. Follicles, and even less his quotes from Bertrand Russell. As I walk away from the old arcade, though, one item of a clown's passing came to completion. The gate is locked again, bridged with brass, and Lou isn't allowed to keep the key. I take a deep breath, a heart starter, on the curbside, and again I wonder if it is just the medication kicking in. The best smell of all is the unadorned, unhygienic smell of the living, such as along the broad avenues, among the jacaranda, I am thinking. From upstairs I hear 2 honks from a clown horn. Honk, honk. And after that the arcade is silent and forgotten, and full of nothing but dusty odours again.